All righty. Thank you all for joining us tonight for our Black Tech Town Hall, AI algorithms and the cost to our future. We have some amazing featured speakers lined up. And so I just want to thank you all so much for joining us. And we're going to get to hear from them here shortly. All right. On our agenda this evening, we're going to go through a welcome, and then we're going to talk about the state of play and why we're all here tonight on this call. We're going to have two conversations, one where we are going to get into AI algorithms and digital safety. And the second conversation is going to be around data centers and environmental harms. And we're going to close out tonight with some next steps and closing actions. All right. So we always like to start our calls with a community check-in. And so tonight, I want to ask folks to introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Destiny Newell. Pronouns are she, her, and I am calling in from Los Angeles. So I'd love to hear where folks are calling in from tonight. And I'd love to hear one thing you're hoping to learn more about tonight. I know we have some amazing conversations and a lot of insight. And so I'm hoping to learn a little bit more around AI and education myself. And so feel free to drop what you are coming into the call hoping to learn a little bit more. I also want to flag that tonight we will have an open Q&A throughout the program. So please drop your questions in our Q&A chat. And like always, I like to start our calls off by grounding us in who Color of Change is. If this is your first time at a Color of Change call or your first time in a long time, Color of Change is the nation's largest online racial justice organization. And we are happy to help people respond effectively to the injustices in the world around them. And as a national online force driven by millions of members, we move decision makers through creating campaigns that push corporations and government decision makers to create a more human and a less hostile world for Black folks in America. If you are down with Color of Change and you're down to support this mission, drop a 1 in the chat. Tonight, I am joined by my colleagues, which you will all get to hear from on our call. And so feel free to give them a warm welcome as they come up throughout various parts of the program. You get to hear from them, but I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce our folks on the team. We have Nadine Smith, our president and CEO, who will be joining us. We have Michael Huggins, our deputy senior director of policy and government affairs, who will be joining us. We have Zara Bask, our campaign manager, who will be joining us and talking about our latest campaign. And we have Brandon Tucker, our senior director of policy and government affairs, who will also be guiding us through our conversations tonight. And so without further ado, I would like to start off our call with a quick video before we get into our program.
Released last year from Color of Change, titled Black Tech Agenda, Advancing Equity and Reimagining Technology. The United States federal government is deploying AI and it's impacting our daily lives. If an algorithm flags someone incorrectly, a mother could quite literally lose access to her child's medication, or a family could lose food support. There's nothing stopping the Department of Justice from using racially biased algorithms to decide who gets released from prison. AI shouldn't be determining who gets care, who stays in prison, or who can feed their kids without any sense of oversight or recourse. The government's use of AI cannot be unchecked and unregulated. If we want the public to trust the federal government, then we must have transparency. I yield back.
All right. And with that, I'm going to ask Michael Huggins to join us.
Hey, everyone. I really want to thank you for coming to our Black Tech Town Hall. We're so excited to present our town hall for the Black Tech Agenda AI, algorithms, and the costs to our future. In 2024, we released our second version of the Black Tech Agenda, an affirmative vision of what technology looks like when it's working for for Black people and our communities. Our agenda is focused on six key pillars. Black people need individual control over their digital lives. Black communities need clean digital access. Technology must work fairly for Black economic success. Black workers need protection and pathways in tech. Black creators need control over their expression. And Black neighborhoods need community control. Our big major campaign that we have launched to address this is Fair Pay, Fair Price. So, Black workers make up 23% of people working through apps. These are folks like delivery and ride services. These are your Ubers, these is your DoorDash, Instacart, even though they're only 12.1% of all workers in America. However, these workers get paid through computer systems that set different wages based on factors that often reflect existing biases, meaning some people get paid less for doing the exact same work. And then corporations such as RealPage, YieldStar, TurboTenant produce algorithms that artificially inflate housing rental prices in addition to creating a false market scarcity. Major corporations are utilizing these algorithms to drive up mortgages and rent prices. The impacts have been seen in Black, Brown, low-income neighborhoods, communities, and cities. And then on AI data centers, this is the big word that you're hearing right now. The placement of data centers to support artificial intelligence or AI is intentional. They are targeting Black communities that are economically disenfranchised. Black households, especially rural ones in the South, are not using AI as much computing power, but they are having to pay for that demand in both money and pollution. Data centers drive 70% of increased energy use with subsidies, already raising utility bills for consumers. Black communities are also 33% more likely to receive lung cancer diagnoses, the cancer most associated with air pollution exposure, than Black people living in other regions. Many of the same communities that lack access to digital resources bear the toxic burden of the tech industry's waste. So, of course, at Color Change, we want to give you the resources you need to get involved and to fight back. First, we contact your representatives and senators in Congress and DC and tell them to support the In Rent Fixing Act and the Empowering App-Based Workers Act. These are two bills that Color Change supports, very much in line with our fair pay, fair price work. Next, sign our petition to push back against corporations like YieldStar, RealPage, and TurboTenant, who, as I mentioned before, are using algorithms to raise rents across the country. And of course, we are committed to making sure that you all have the resources that you need to protect your digital lives. At our last Black Town Hall, we heard you, and we have developed Color of Change's digital defense guide for Black people. This guide will help you individually spot pesky spam emails and text messages, figure out whether content is AI or real, protect yourself against identity theft, creating strong passwords, using AI tools safely, and protecting yourself against data breaches. So, all of this information I'll make sure to put in the chat. But I really want to thank you all so much for coming to this program. I will now kick things off to my colleague, Zara. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for that in-depth overview of the state of play and the racial, economic, and environmental impacts of artificial intelligence algorithms and the grander cost of data center development and expansion at the expense of Black votes nationwide. Honing in on a specific algorithmic issue, corporations previously mentioned, such as YieldStar, RealPage, TurboTenant, Resman, amongst others, are tools used by realtors, landlords, internet housing marketplaces, and renter and housing portals to create inaccurate pricing. These algorithms are used as mechanisms to drive up costs of neighborhoods, pricing people out of their communities, and these algorithms disproportionately impact Black, Brown, and Hispanic communities. As a collective, we overwhelmingly rent, with 58% of Black households and 52% of Hispanic Latino households renting their homes. This impact on Black, Brown, and low-income communities exacerbates gentrification and rapid expansion, leading to community displacement, housing insecurity, and disbandment of long-standing cultural centers. Additionally, from 1980 to 2020, gentrification has impacted 523 majority Black neighborhoods, with 150, nearly one-third of said neighborhoods experiencing complete racial turnover. The introduction of harmful programs like RealPage, YieldStar, Resman, TurboTenant, and others are likely to expedite the gentrification process, with generations of folks being priced out of their neighborhoods, displaced, and many facing housing insecurity. We have to stand firm against corporations like YieldStar, RealPage, Resman, TurboTenant, and others, and we need you, our members, to join us in this fight and sign our petition. Additionally, we want to all hear from you tonight, and so we have a brief survey with a few questions where you all can enlighten us here at COC with your own experiences renting and if AI has impacted your ability to find safe and fair housing. With that, I would like to welcome Color of Change's new president and CEO, Nadine Smith.
Hi there, I'm Nadine Smith, and I'm honored to serve as president and CEO of Color of Change, and I'm excited to moderate tonight's discussion on AI, algorithms, and digital safety. Tonight, we're going to talk about how AI and algorithms are costing Black communities right now, and we're going to explore who's benefiting and who's paying, and what the balance sheet actually looks like. Now, for me, this is a very personal conversation. Just this past week, I don't know how many people are on Facebook, but all of a sudden I started getting pop-ups from Facebook that basically were asking, "Are you all right?" It said, "You're the only one who can see this," and began to interrogate my mental health. The first time I just thought it was the first time I just thought it was, Facebook trying to, responding to bad publicity. The second time I got one, I looked a little closer and asked, why am I getting these? And basically it said, either people are reporting you like a swatting attack, or our algorithm has been reviewing your content, has made a decision that we think that you are a danger to yourself. The third time I got one, that's when I realized this is some coordinated attack. And so we'll be covering a number of different ways that AI poses threats to our community, threats to our planet. But I also just want to, note that these are the things that we're beginning to encounter in our everyday life. I'm joined this evening by Dupe Ajayi and Clarence Ako. Welcome. Dupe Ajayi is a strategic growth leader and founder of the Ajayi Effect, specializing in the intersection of AI, brand strategy, and mission-driven innovation, a Cambridge-credentialed expert in ethical AI, and a practitioner of social impact marketing. She has led digital transformations for global organizations, including Bank of America, Girls Who Code, and Airbnb, driven by the principle that if access isn't at the center, she won't be. Dupe focuses on integrating technology and data into brand building strategies that future-proof missions and maximize community presence. We're also joined by Clarence Ako. Clarence is a civil rights attorney working at the intersection of racial justice, technology, and the law. He currently serves as a senior attorney at Tectonic Justice, a new national advocacy organization focused on the impact of artificial intelligence on low-income communities. Clarence is also a co-founder of the Notice Coalition, a national network of advocates working to end youth surveillance and algorithmic discrimination in schools. Welcome to both of you. Dupe, I'll start with you. You said recently in a video online something that really stood out. The algorithm doesn't just reflect power, it protects it. And now a handful of big tech companies control so much of what we see and do online. What does that actually mean for everyday Black people trying to live their lives, build careers, and take care of their families?
May I
That's
listen?
right.
So I love the
Elon Musk
framing.
did this. Elon Musk did this. Go ahead.
I love the way that you started out and the framing that you've mentioned, and because this is happening in our everyday life, it's something that we're experiencing day to day, and we may not even realize what's going on with this. I am a practitioner in this space. Marketing is my thing, AI marketing, ethical AI marketing is my thing. And, when we think about every day, think about the BAFTAs. By now, we've all heard about what happened this past Sunday. But as well, what happened with Google after that was something to note. So, and for those who may have been under a rock and didn't hear, John Davidson, a Tourette's campaigner, involuntarily said a slur when Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage. And it globally, spread around. Google pushed out a notification about the incident to millions of phones. And their own system, it actually inserted the N-word into the alert during this month. And Google has said they've apologized and said that it wasn't AI, it was a system error, that their safety systems didn't catch it. And to me, that's even worse. That's even worse because there are checks and balances that are in place, and this is one of the most powerful technology companies in the world. When I think about day to day, right now, Black women have one of the highest unemployment rates in decades. And my own mentees have been coming to me, asking what should they do, getting automatic rejections after applying, even though they're well qualified for positions, for roles. And I decided to do a test myself where, using my mother's maiden name, my mother's name is Deborah DeVoe, and my name, and just asking Gemini, what do you think this woman looks like? Who do you think she actually is? And in doing that, it was interesting. My mother's maiden name, now my mother looks like me, it came back as a white woman. They described her as being sophisticated, graceful, elegant. And for myself, I got a generic image, red streaks in hair, totally different woman. So this is what the AI system is assuming automatically of me. And when I bring it forward to creators, and those who are small business owners who are relying on these systems for their livelihoods, for their economic growth, there is this harm. So for me as well, I have a bunch of YouTube channels. I have a main channel. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but I have a sub channel that only uses my voice. And that is intentional. I'm constantly testing how these things perform. I just yesterday, I knew that the 47 would be talking about affordability in this country as a main topic. And I released a video on YouTube related to this, a short, 2 views on this short. On this other channel that I have, where it's a faceless channel, it's just my voice, that same short within an hour had over 30, 40 views and then went up to 60 views and counting. Uh, so if we are relying on these systems, right, to inform us, to help with our livelihood in some way, shape, or form, but they are blocking us, then it's a problem, right? There's no checks and balances, I can tell you that on Google's side. You will have to fight very hard in order for them to be able to override these actual systems.
So this isn't a glitch. This is baked into the algorithm.
Absolutely.
It reflects the racism and in many ways amplifies it because it scales that racism immediately.
Yes.
Clarence, Tectonic Justice put out a report called Inescapable AI, and the findings were really striking. basically you found that essentially all 92 million low-income people in this country, everyone below 200% on the poverty line, have some part of their lives decided by AI. Not some, but all 92 million. So for someone watching tonight, that number is hard to wrap your head around. When you say inescapable, what do you actually mean? Can you talk a little bit about where AI is making decisions in our everyday lives, even for people who may not even be remotely aware it's happening?
Yeah, and thank you all again for inviting me tonight. Want to begin by saying, we are seeing artificial intelligence being integrated in nearly every single basic human need. Integral social services like healthcare, education, labor and employment issues, and the housing context. We are seeing a variety of artificial intelligence technologies that make decisions about whether or not people are going to have access to their basic needs. I've seen this work up close and personal as a civil rights attorney. A lot of my work began looking at the impact of artificial intelligence in the educational context, and in particular, looking at how these technologies are being used in ways that are reinventing the school to prison pipeline. Done some work down in, down in Florida, where a school district had decided to essentially give over access to vast amounts of confidential student data. Think about grades, attendance records, think about behavioral records, handing that information over to law enforcement that had designed their own algorithm to predict which kids they felt were going to be destined for a life of crime, what they call prolific criminal offenders. They had built out a database of over 17,000 kids, and they were targeting those kids and their families to push them out of the community because they felt that those young people were essentially irredeemable. And you can imagine what young people that were being targeted by this program, right? This was a school district that at the time in Florida was still actively under a desegregation order dating back to the 1950s and 60s. And so here you have in this community a community that is inventing new forms of structural racism that's holding our young people back while they still hadn't dealt with the legacies of racial discrimination from decades ago. And this is a phenomenon that we're seeing play out in a variety of contexts. One thing that Tectonic is really focused on right now is the implementation of what is known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I call it the One Big Ugly Bill. But this is a bill that cuts millions off from access to critical services like Medicaid and SNAP. And that implementation is actively underway right now. And there are a variety of companies that are selling AI products to states and other government agencies that are going to be responsible for implementing these programs. And they are trying to encourage the use of artificial intelligence to make decisions about who's going to be eligible for these services, making accusations of fraud and kicking people off of these services. And that's going to deny potentially millions of people access to their basic human needs. All of these things are playing out in ways that reflect what Princeton sociologist Ruha Benjamin describes as the new Jim Code, right? CODE. And the idea is that we are seeing these technologies not just being implemented in these one-off glitches, but instead working together to recreate the systems of racial subordination, racial segregation that defined generations of Black life before. And it's really up to folks like us on this call to be stewards and to be paying attention to these issues so that we can fight this generation of racial discrimination just as those that came before us.
That's absolutely chilling. And as a parent of a teenager who's in high school in Florida, the idea that they're using data, zip codes, academic records, it makes me think of that Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, where people are being, jailed, not for what they did, but what the algorithm says they might be capable of doing. Absolutely chilling. Now, speaking of reports, and on the heels of where we started, Dupe, you were also part of a report that folks can find on your website, which definitely give your website when you give the answer. The toolkit for digital liberation. Now, a lot of people think of algorithms as neutral, just code, just math, but your toolkit makes clear that that's not true. So, when you talk about biased algorithms, systemic suppression, shadow banning, help us understand what's actually happening, behind the scenes, what the Jim code is actually doing, and why do platforms keep showing up as obstacles for our community instead of opportunities?
Well, everything old is new again. This is, an old problem where you meaning these systems, they don't want to empower us. And, tagging, nodding, double clicking on a lot of what Clarence was saying. The idea is, and the main thing is, a lot of us are not at the tables building out these technologies and are kept out of these things to even flag when something may be problematic, or we're not empowered while we're in these spaces because there are so few of us to be able to speak up. Coming back to an example again with YouTube, for me, it all started very innocently in talking about then presidential candidate Kamala Harris and her experience from the lens of being a marketer and what that experience was like for her, the ad decisions that were selected, etc. And I noticed this suppression happening. I am a marketer myself, so I could look under the hood and see what was actually going on. Immediate flags, came to me saying that I was promoting a political candidate when that wasn't what happened. Spoke to people on Google and YouTube's policy side, and the flag has remained. This is almost 2 years later in the making. And so I started thinking about this and how I could empower myself and using our own platforms is one of the things that I push, that I tell everybody they should do. But collaborated with you all, in addition to some other individuals who are fantastic for this digital toolkit. And the idea is for us to be able to create these spaces for ourselves whenever we can to lift up each other and to override these systems, which don't have eyes or ears, biases baked in. But we can, in any way that we can override them. An example of doing this is I don't know if you all are familiar with, there is a very famous YouTuber. His name is FD Signifier, black man, black creator. He has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube now. And the algorithm initially buried his own content. He was ready to quit, but it was a larger creator that actually amplified him and broke through the suppression. And his channel then came back. And now he's doing the same for smaller Black creators. That's an algorithm workaround. That's community. So the toolkit, it has these pillars in it. Three of them. One is protecting yourself, so diversifying off platform. We all know a lot of people have left Meta, are leaving Meta or leaving these other platforms, and I get it. I would say if you can own your audience to be able to do that, there's a 3-2-1 backup rule. So 3 copies of your content, 2 different storage types if you can, all offline, old school. So if these platforms are deleted tomorrow, if they try to suppress you, it's okay because you're the owner of your content. Amplifying each other, as I mentioned, what FD did, in being able to lift other people up, and then demanding accountability. So when I mentioned YouTube, I'm at the AG, I'm constantly emailing them proof of being suppressed, and even having YouTube's own AI admit, yes, that it was suppressing me. And I send all of that information to the AG. I'm in touch with them in addition to talking about it, continuing to talk about it. Is something that we need to be able to do to just override these systems and make our voices heard.
I want to talk about something. It's a bit of a turn from where we've been. Clarence, you have you were part of putting together a publication called Dangerous Data: What Communities Should Know About Artificial Intelligence and the School to Prison Pipeline and School Surveillance. And we've talked about that a little bit already. But one of the things that I know we're going to include in a future town hall is just how insidious deepfake AI is, and so many possibilities when, with a very small prompt, folks may have seen this online, but it shows a prompt of Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? And, from 5 years ago, from 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and now. And the speed with which deepfake AI technology has advanced feels really chilling, really dangerous. And I wonder, given all of the ways that AI is a gateway to the criminal justice system. Have you spent much time thinking about, or do you see people thinking about how a technology that can, in some ways, sort of tear the fabric of reality by creating a world in which we cannot trust our own eyes? Um, but what the implications can be for our community with a single string of text, a convincing a replicant of any one of us engaging in a criminal activity, or what was it, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise fighting on a roof can be, created just like that. Are there conversations about how that technology, the threat that it poses from everything from voter suppression to fomenting violence? What's the conversation happening in your world?
Yeah, one of the things that we're deeply concerned about is the way in which that kind of AI generated content and information is actually being integrated into the decision making processes within the criminal legal system. Imagine, right, that type of forensic information being used to accuse you of a crime, or we know, for example, law enforcement agencies that are using generative AI to develop their police reports, and we know about the threats of AI systems that hallucinate or that create whole, facts out of whole cloth that aren't based in reality. And that kind of experimental recklessness is playing out in a variety of contexts. I see it all the time in the public education context, where we're seeing school districts just embrace a variety of controversial surveillance technologies that are completely untested. Some of them have actually been found by federal law enforcement agencies to be fraudulent and deceptive in how they operate. But they're placing our kids' lives at risk. And unfortunately, schools don't have the capacity to be able to independently assess these technologies. And so they're just purchasing them, throwing tens of thousands of dollars to acquire these technologies that are placing our young people at risk. I'll give you a really practical example. A couple of weeks ago, the Notice Coalition, we were made aware that there was a school district in Maryland that had purchased what they call an automated weapons detection system. So think about regular old metal detector, and you just kind of add a layer of artificial intelligence to it. This particular system actually works through the school's camera system, and so it can, in theory, identify weapons using the magic of artificial intelligence. But the technology was so sophisticated that it couldn't even tell the difference between a gun and a bag of Doritos. And that misidentification led, I think it was over like 6 officers with their guns pulled towards a group of Black high school kids who were just hanging out after practice, eating a bag of chips. And the cops are pulling them over, arresting them, searching them for a gun that didn't exist. And you can listen to the officer body worn camera footage, and they're asking, wait, who even called us? Who called us out here? And they realized it was an AI system that had made the misidentification, and that caused those young people's lives to be put in danger. This isn't the first time that technology had been used. Just a couple of weeks ago, we heard about that same technology not being able to tell the difference between clarinet and a gun. We've heard about lunch boxes and so on and so forth. And so this idea of kind of recklessly adopting these experimental technologies that really can lead to life and death scenarios is very much at play, both in the criminal legal system and really more broadly across a number of government agencies that make these life and death decisions about our communities.
I mean, it is a brave new world, and it's absolutely chilling. I want to thank you both for being here. And Dupe, you said something earlier about FD Signifier benefiting from being lifted up by creators, and I know that that is one of the ways that we can look out for each other in these spaces to help people not be suppressed, to actively engage with Black creators whose content you value, makes it harder for them to torpedo that content. I'm really grateful for you bringing that up. How can people follow, get access to reports? How can people stay in touch with the work that you're doing?
Mhm. So, and thank you so much for that. I'm the Ajay Effect on all platforms. So my last name, THE, and then my last name, EFFECT, on all platforms. And I would say, for everybody, just what I encourage outside of that is to make sure that you're in the game and that you're aware. Clarence is bringing up, these real-time examples that are happening for our children. We have these examples that are happening with suppression on almost every platform, from LinkedIn to YouTube, almost every platform it is happening. Getting docs flagged. Educate yourself as much as you can about this space, knowing as much as you can about this space, and push for ethical AI. Really push for it. Push for us to be in these conversations. The technology is continuing to move at the speed of light. However, an intersectional lens on this technology is not happening. And that is the thing. If we had someone who was developing this technology for students that had an intersectional lens or that understood that, then it would help, right? At the end of the day, these machines are the information is coming from a human. However, the right human has to be in position. So push for that. We have to continue to push for that. Those are the two or three things that I can think of that are buried within the toolkit for individuals to really take ownership so that we're sovereign and that we have control of, this new world that we are in that's moving at the speed of light.
Well, thank you both so much. We have more to share. This AI is posing not only a threat to our civil rights, but it's also literally posing a threat to our planet. And so I want to thank our guests and send it now to my colleague, Brandon Tucker.
Thank you so much, Nadine. Thank you, Dupay. Thank you, Clarence. The conversation, I learned a lot. It was truly informative, really important information. My name is Brandon Tucker, everybody. I am the Senior Policy Director of Government Affairs here at Color of Change. And I'm very excited and honored to get into the second part of our conversation tonight. Stick with us, utilize the Q&A function, and the resources are going to be available for you all. But coming up in this segment, we're going to talk data centers and environmental harms with Candace Fortin and Latricia Adams. Some quick introductions. Candace Fortin, she's a political organizer, producer, a consultant, currently serving as the senior strategist for 350.org, a climate justice organization. Her political work is centered around racial justice and equity. She has worked on over 40 electoral campaigns all over the U.S., centering progressive candidates, and we are grateful and happy to have a former COC, Color of Change alum, in the room. Thanks so much for joining us, Candace. And next, Latricia Adams, a native of Memphis, Tennessee, and the founder and CEO of Young, Gifted, and Green, an organization focused on environmental justice and civil rights. She was the youngest African American woman and the only K through 12 educator appointed to the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, where she was a champion for children's and maternal health. Throughout her career, she has held various leadership roles in community, educational, environmental, and public health organizations. She has received numerous accolades for her activism and environmental justice work. We're grateful and happy for you to join us tonight. Kicking off the questions, Candace. We've been having a thoughtful conversation about AI algorithms, the cost to our future. But we can't have that conversation without talking about our environment. This new technology is not floating in the sky, it's in our neighborhoods. I saw in the comment section, in the chat, people are seeing data centers in their communities. And these data centers require massive amounts of power and water. Generators affect air quality. Can you speak to the environmental justice piece of this conversation? Why is this so important to Black communities? And I know you've been working closely with a number of communities regarding utility rates, insurance costs, health risks, and more. So handing it to you to shed some light on the subject for us, Candace.
Yeah, thank you. So just to level set to begin with, like a lot of the issues that we're talking about tonight, we cannot fight for anything if we do not have a habitable planet to live on. So let's start there. The last 10 consecutive years have been the warmest years on record globally. 2025 was confirmed as the hottest year in over 175 years of data. We are seeing critical issues of water depletion in about a dozen states. We're looking at California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, Texas, Oregon, who are already facing severe critical issues with water storage. Millions of people are going to be facing these water restrictions. They're going to be impacting their lives. And it's also going to be impacting our agriculture and how we access food. Now, when we talk about AI data centers, they are used as to cool the towers for evaporation as well as for humidification. That's the purpose of the use of water. A single large data center can potentially consume 5 million gallons daily. So just think about that amount of water and what it could actually be used for outside of the purpose of AI. And these centers are projected to use up to 1.7 trillion gallons by 2027. And when we talk about pollution, AI data centers rely heavily on fossil fuel industries and power plants. And so they run the risk of increasing those local pollutions, which can threaten public health as well as impacting already vulnerable populations. Then we're talking about noise pollution. So we're talking about constant fan noise that comes from the data centers. We're talking about 24/7 flood lighting that can disrupt neighborhoods, sleep disruption, increasing of stress. Then we're talking about a grid that we already know doesn't work for us. And I'm talking about like the fossil fuel grids, which most of our utilities are reliant on. They fail us during extreme weather events, and they also get overburdened and can lead to sporadic blackouts. So the reliance of the data centers on top of that actually increases the use of electricity by 15% a year, which is 4 times more than the overall electricity demand that we have right now. And also when you start to talk about your electricity bills that are already really high, and we get these rate hikes oftentimes because of existing pipeline projects, we're now looking at an additional increase of 6% to 12% solely because of data centers, and that would be increasing each year. So when we get into environmental racism, we have some issues where these sites are getting targeted in areas that are already lower income Black communities. What the AI data centers are doing and what they're doing as far as their targeting is replicating what we already know about environmental racism. They're doing the same thing that these polluters do with refineries and petrochemical plants and identifying areas that are lower income Black and brown communities where they don't think that these communities are going to advocate for themselves. And this tactic only exacerbates existing issues in these communities like poor air quality, high water consumption, noise pollution, cost of living. And we're seeing a lot of this in the media that's starting to come up, whether it's South Fulton, Georgia, PG County, whether we're talking about Memphis, which Latricia will be sharing more about. But it is becoming more and more of a Black environmental justice issue. So folks are pushing back against these projects, and it's mainly because these communities are not getting anything from these projects. There's no benefit from it. They're extracting a lot from the communities, but they're offering very little in return. Right now, currently, we have 5,000 data centers that are implemented in the US. There's a projected 3,000 new data centers that are being proposed for construction or under construction right now. So we have to start asking these questions about why this infrastructure is necessary and needed. We already have a lot of fights that are happening with household utilities that we have to fight for that basically give us necessities for day-to-day living. So whether we're talking about just keeping the lights on, keeping the refrigerator cool so we can have safe food, whether we're talking about, power so that we can have access to breathing machines, that is what we need to still be struggling about because we already have nationwide issues with energy burden. We already have issues with rate hikes that continue and continue and continue. We already have issues with fossil fuel grids that do not work. So there's a big question about what is the reason for continuing this infrastructure, knowing that it's exacerbating the climate crisis, knowing that it's impacting public health, knowing that it's impacting the cost of living, knowing that we don't need any of this when we already have a very severe financial crisis that's happening in the US. We have to think about what is the utility of this infrastructure. So we have people using ChatGPT, but what is the utility of that really? Is that a necessity? Do we need that whenever we have 21% of the US that can't even read past the 5th grade level? Do we really need these AI machines to take over people's jobs when federal funding is getting depleted left and right and people are experiencing record high layoffs? It doesn't make sense. So what we really do need is to have people really standing up because it's happening all over the US. But we need folks to really start to stand up, showing up at the city council meeting, these permitting hearings, and really making their voices heard about it, because we cannot afford to have more data centers. They have to be shut down.
I really appreciate that, Candice. Latricia, I have a formal question for you, but I want to give you 30 seconds or so to if you had any direct response to what Candice laid out, and also to the point of, is it all extraction and no return? I know there's a massive data center in Shelby County or in Memphis.
Yeah, so it is very much so extractive and exploitive. One of the things that I do want to highlight quickly, specifically as it relates to the deployment of these data centers in the Southeast, they
Mhm.
are very much so targeting traditional industrial cities. So, for example, Memphis heavy industry used to be deemed the manufacturing capital, of the nation, when you think about parts of Mississippi, but even in the Midwest as well. So, a lot of communities that are struggling with blight, a lot of communities that have a lot of abandoned commercial spaces. It is like a paradise for these tech bros, for these folks that are looking to deploy these data centers. Now, specifically with Memphis, Memphis is a little bit unique, where with XAI, where Elon Musk, he actually did not seek a pilot. Now that is kind of a catch-22. Because he didn't seek a pilot, that does mean that the community was able to advocate for a percentage of the revenue that comes from property taxes to actually be allocated back into community. But that also means that since he did not do a pilot, we have even less accessibility to truly understand what are they even doing at this data center, right? So, for example, like you're not able to implement FOIA requests because it's still a private business. Now, another thing that is very unique about Memphis, and I know this has come up quite a bit, even in, not affluent white communities as well, is the lack of attentiveness to conservation of water, and with these data centers not footing the bill for their production. Now, in Memphis, one of the things that is, from an environmentalist perspective, that is a win, is XAI has made a commitment and they got a permit approved to do a water use facility. That's major. So with a water reuse facility, that means that once it's done being built, that they will come off of our drinking water source. Now, Memphis is unique where we have a natural sand aquifer. Where XAI is located, there's 17 other polluters, like other industries, including oil refinery, including the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is actually the power supplier to places within the Southeast, not even just in Tennessee. So with them coming off of our drinking water source, that also means that the Tennessee Valley Authority now can also use that water reuse facility. So this is more on the innovation side of using technology to divert some of the excessive water usage that's occurring right now. And it has implications for, future industry that does require a lot of commercial scale water usage. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is about jobs. So, because places like Memphis and a lot of these majority Black cities where you see these technologies deployed, AI is taking jobs. We knew that this was going to happen. So, specifically in Memphis, literally since January, we're still in February, right? We've already lost over 12,000 jobs just since January, right? And it's only going to get increasingly worse. And so, with these data centers, they keep touting that there's going to be jobs. Where are the jobs? And even if there are jobs, one, it's not going to be that many. And then two, there's not appropriate oversight to ensure that those jobs are actually landing with people from the community, right? So, and with it being a private industry, they're not subject to some of the private
public type of data sharing, if that makes sense. So a lot of this is just falsehoods. And
Mm.
oftentimes, Black cities get bamboozled, and it's not to, I guess, cape for some of the Black leaders, but our Black cities are cash poor. They're
Mm.
cash poor. We're still dealing with a fallout of a failing economy right now, and they're really desperate. And these oligarchs are really taking advantage of the vulnerability of these disinvested communities. Um, and then the last thing that I will say is it's really important for everyone to look at what their local land use code says. So in Memphis and in a lot of other places, a lot of these data centers are getting by right permits, meaning that because they're going into existing buildings, they're able to bypass a land use process, which robs us from a democratic process. So that means that a land use control board, for example, if they can bypass that process, they don't even get a chance to vote. Additionally, even with applied laws like the Clean Air Act, for example, the Clean Air Act was passed in the 70s. We didn't know that data centers were going to be here. So it's also very gray and ambiguous from a legal recourse perspective around what is considered to be illegal or legal, what is allowable, what is not allowable. So this is really a interesting space that we're in, but we are definitely in an era where we're going to set precedents with a lot of these data centers that's getting approved and those that are getting denied.
I appreciate that, Latricia. Um, I'm gonna try to combine two questions and just let you all speak to it because I know we're running low on time, but I don't get to speak to y'all often, and I just want the audience to glean as much info as we can. I want to spend a second on two themes. One, what's working on the ground? What organizing strategies, what's needed in the community? What do we need to do more of? And then, um, if y'all could just sprinkle in a little bit of y'all's perspectives on the historical context. These are emerging technologies, but as both of you all just spoke to, these communities are repeatedly pillaged in a sense, and become fertile ground for new industries and new environmental harms. And our people are consistently impacted generation after generation. So if y'all just want to combine organizing what's needed, what do we have to do more of, and then also the historical context that folks should be aware of. And I'll start with you, Candace.
Yeah, I can give an example. I'm based in Detroit, and there was a proposed data center in Southfield, which is about a 15-minute drive from me. I think there's some folks in Michigan know what I'm talking about. And there was a overflow of people who showed up at the city council meeting. I saw it first on Nextdoor. People just started talking about it. They understood because there was already a lot of self-mobilization about DTE, which is our local utility company. And people were already making the connections between the data center and the increase of their utilities bill. So they're like, oh no, we already have this petition about this, and now this is happening. And so there was a lot of self-mobilization that was happening where people actually showed up at this city council meeting in Southfield, and it was packed. Everyone got up and did their testimonies, and they've postponed that project. So they have like a few more hearings that they have to go through, but that was a really excellent first step. That doesn't always happen, but it really was to strengthen numbers and people just needed to show up on a Tuesday night and making their selves present and their voices heard. And it really is, a lot of it has to do with that. I think a lot of the issues sometimes with what we encounter, especially with like environmental racism, is that they assume that people are not going to stand up and they're not going to fight and they're not going to know what the issues are. And so whenever you combat that and you show up and show out and it actually does bring results, that terrifies them. So right now, I would definitely say showing up and educating more folks about it and making those connections. And also sometimes the pathway in is utilities. We all use utilities. And whenever you start to make that connection to like the cost of living and how this is going to impact that, and sometimes for other folks, it's going to be about, public health, whatever the situation is that makes sense to them. It's a perfect segue to getting other folks involved. So spreading the word. Nextdoor app was actually really lit. I'm just saying that. Use Nextdoor, well, maybe not Facebook personally, but use Nextdoor, another like app where you can actually connect with other folks in your community to spread the information, getting people mobilized. And it's once you connect it to the cost of living, I think everything else follows after that.
Really appreciate that, Candace. Latricia?
Yeah, so one of the things that I definitely want to uplift in this space is because what XAI kind of happened and it exploded, right? We've been fighting this for 2 years. But one of the things that has been really helpful to us, we are best friends with a lot of journalists. It is really important when data centers are coming into your community that you are able to control the narrative. We literally had to combat misinformation very, very quickly. In addition to showing up to meetings, it's also really important to establish coalitions. One band, one sound. When you are trying to resist these data centers, they're going to infiltrate. They're going to try to find where they can break in, where they can catch you slipping. And so we literally build a very strong coalition where we can come from different perspectives, but was very careful with the language that we use. That doesn't matter if you're from Boxtown or if you're just an advocate that's not even directly impacted, but have the same types of talking points. The other thing that is really important is this is such an interesting space because a lot of this is very local. So we have collaborated with allies and identified them both on our city council, both with our county commission, and then also our state legislators as well. Y'all, there are literally been instances where myself and Keisha and Pearson with Memphis Community Against Pollution, we've literally wrote resolutions to get passed. So the hearings that happened in Memphis that went viral that you may have seen, we had to get a resolution passed to ensure that there was public comment. That was the first time in the history of the Shelby County Health Department where there was a public hearing. The other thing is we have to demand resources because these data centers, they're corporate fiends. Like their bottom line is money. And so when I mentioned earlier, because XAI didn't take a pilot, we worked with our administration, with the city mayor. They introduced an environmental ordinance. Now, we did want 75% at minimum to go to the impacted communities, but our city council only allocated for 25%. So that means that at least about 6 million will go to the impacted communities. But it doesn't stop there. Hold these billionaires accountable, call them out, don't be afraid. But the thing is, with resistance, they're not going anywhere. So, as an organizer, as an activist, you also have to be attentive to the trauma that's associated with this because it can feel like you're losing because the data center didn't go anywhere. But the biggest thing is how can we prioritize it not causing harm? So, for example, with the methane gas turbines, because we quote unquote cut up so bad in Memphis, they decommissioned those turbines, but then they went across state line. So it's really, really important to watch how they move because they're going to find the next county over and build coalitions across racial boundaries because this is not, only a Black issue. It's a white issue too. So even with like South Haven, where we're neighbors to Memphis, they're very different. I definitely know that we were in Magaland, but we were literally in sync. We were hand in hand talking about the same things. We all want clean air. We all want clean, affordable water. And we also don't want noise pollution. It doesn't have to be a partisan issue. So, don't be afraid to lock arms with some folks, you ain't got to be besties, but we are stronger together.
That's I wish I had 25, 30 more minutes with y'all. Latricia Adams, Candace Forden, I am immensely grateful. I know the audience is as well. We have to figure out a way to do something to follow this up to continue this conversation because I think we've only scratched the surface on the information that we need to glean from you all. Thank you. And also quickly before I kick it to Destiny. Candace, what does the audience need to know if they need to look up your work? And we'll do the same for Latricia as well.
Y'all can sign up to 350.org if you want, but we are global, so don't be alarmed if you see stuff happening in Africa or, in South America, but, it also does connect to the US as well. But, we're expansive, but we are, narrowing in as well about AI data centers. And we also have some upcoming work around make polluters pay, similar to what Latricia was talking about with XAI, around how you can hold folks accountable. So sign up and you'll get the updates.
Really appreciate you, Candace. Latricia?
Yes, so definitely follow us on social media. A little bit of Ken, we're not global, but we are a national organization, but we work in Memphis. This is my hometown. But definitely sign up to our listserv, our newsletter. You can access that through our website. But Instagram is the best place.
Really appreciate you all. Candace, Latricia Adams. And now I'm kicking it back to my colleague, Destiny. Thank you all so much.
I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I'm just going to ask folks to sign our petition, take action, and share your story with us. Like Latricia mentioned, it is so important when we own that narrative. And so we are taking a survey on AI and housing and the displacement and gentrification that our communities are facing. Learn more about our guests tonight. We have all of their websites linked on our resource sheet, and we have all of our resources as well linked here and easily accessible. Take this, share it with your friends, with your community, and invite someone to join us for our next call. Thank you again for joining us on a Wednesday for our Black Tech Agenda town hall on AI algorithms and the cost to our future. Everyone have a really great evening.